Hey guys, Dan here. Welcome to another edition of Dan Reviews It, and going through those Roseanne seasons, more than halfway through now from the original series. We're up to season number 5, and back with the horrible Mill Creek packaging. I never ended up getting the original season 5, but then when they re-released all of them in the terrible Mill Creek packaging, I got them. The video quality is better, though, in this than in some of the other Mill Creek stuff that I've gotten, but here we are, season 5. This was another amazing season. It was number 2 in the ratings, so yet again another blockbuster season for the gang. And this is the season that won Roseanne her one and only Emmy Award. Laurie Metcalf had won several, but Roseanne finally got one with this season for one of the episodes we're going to talk about. So let's dive into it. First of all, the new theme song. Every year they sort of amp up the production of the theme song. And this year, you get used to it after watching it straight through. You know, I was watching 4 or 5 episodes a day. But it's a little bit jarring at first, so that was sort of like, I didn't really like that right away. This is the season where every single episode has a cold open. I think last season there were still a few where it led with the theme song, but here every single show had a cold open. Okay, so what's going on this season? I guess before I look at the episode specifically, what's happening? Well, the Lanford Lunchbox is the new business. Roseanne has finally found something to keep her keep a job. You know, she was bouncing from job to job every season. Rod Bell's closed at the end of last season, so now her and Nancy and Jackie and Roseanne and Jackie's mom, Beverly, who becomes a quasi-regular this season, the great Estelle Parsons. So they all go in for the Lanford Lunchbox. The Lanford Custom Cycle closed, so Dan is out of work for much of the season. He does get a few drywall jobs here and there, and then at the end of the season, he hooks up with guest star Tim Curry, and they work on sort of flipping houses together before Tim Curry ends up sort of screwing the deal over and leaving Dan with the bill. But so he is out of work, you know, for much of the season. Lisa Goranson is in the title credits, but really she's only in a few episodes. At the very beginning of the season, her and Mark get married, they elope and move out, so they're not really in the show much at all. There's only maybe 2 episodes I can even think of that she's in. Maybe there's a third. Well, I guess, I mean, the first 2 episodes are really part 1 and 2, so I kind of count that as one episode. And then they're in one other one. And Roseanne is on the phone with her in the Halloween episode, but I don't believe that we see her. So she's kind of out of it. And then we have Darlene, you know, always my favorite. This is the season where her and David get very serious with each other. Not only with each other, but also with their art stuff, with maybe going to an art school. That comes up at the end of the season again, and sort of sprinkled throughout the season, really. And then this is the season also where David moves in a great episode. So all of that's going on, and you know, DJ again just being DJ. He's sort of, there's no season really, I don't think, where DJ gets his own really plot line. You know, he's just kind of hanging here. There's a few funny episodes with him and his friends, but for the most part, he's just doing his DJ thing. So that is that. What else? And I guess that's really everybody, right? Tom Arnold is more or less out of the show now. He has his own show called Jackie Thomas, which gets referenced in 2 of these episodes. They talk about watching it, and then they actually go to a taping of it in the worst episode of the season, which I'll talk about. But that's it for that. So yeah, Beverly becomes basically a regular in this season. She's not in every episode, and she's not in the opening credits either, but she's in a lot of the episodes because of the Lanford Lunchbox thing. And because of that, same with Sandra Bernhard. She was in a few episodes last season, especially like with the Arnie stuff, but now she is in quite a handful of the episodes, and we're fleshing out her character a little bit too, which is great. I like her as a comedian, and I like her as the Nancy character, but like I've said in previous podcasts, I don't really dig the Nancy and Arnie thing. I like her more on her own. We have the whole lesbian plot going on in this season with her and the realtor Marla, and then later on in the season she is dating Tim Curry, so we sort of find out, okay, well, maybe she's bisexual then. Very revolutionary for not only a network television show, but for a show in the top 5. I mean, I don't see shows in the top 5 taking chances that often. That's why shows like, I don't know, Big Bang Theory or Two and a Half Men are so blah, because they just sort of, they find the formula and stick with it. Roseanne was always about pushing boundaries, and it's just a great quality to have. So I guess let's talk about the worst, because the reason this season is just slightly below the last season is because of these 3 episodes that drag it down. The last season, I don't even think there was nothing below a B, and I think there were only 2 Bs here. There are also 2 Bs, but there's also a C+. But to balance that out, more A's than I've given in any season. There's only 1 A+, but there are 7 A's. 6 if you count the first 2 episodes as 1, because it is a 2-parter. So, some of the best episodes of all time here, but then also a few not really great ones. Let's go to the worst, I guess. That is the C+, Lose a Job, Winnebago. And this is when the Connors go with their neighbors, the new neighbors. Of course, the Bowmans moved out at the end of last season, so now we've got Molly's family. It's Molly and her sister and their single father, and some stuff happens with them throughout the season that's pretty interesting. Molly sort of having a crush on David, and we find out kind of, it's returned, so, sort of vice versa. So, but this episode, the episode itself is okay. There's a good conversation with Dan and Roseanne about maybe having another child, which of course they later do in, I don't know what season, 7 maybe? I think it is, with little Jerry Garcia. Maybe it's even season 8. But, so they talk about that. But the problem is, the last 4 minutes is just a commercial for the Jackie Thomas show, which was the Tom Arnold vehicle. So obviously they're still married in this portion of their career. I liked the Jackie Thomas show. I thought it was funny. We watched it as a family. A lot of people did. I mean, it had Roseanne as its lead-in. It was a top 10 show. And I really also liked the supporting actress on the show, Alison LaPlaca. I had watched her Fox show, Duet and Open House, back in the early days of Fox. So I liked, the Jackie Thomas show, but this is just ridiculous. They go to a taping of it, and the last 4 minutes of this episode is them at the pre-taping, and they see, which is so, it's so fourth wall breaking too, because it's like, well, obviously Tom Arnold was Arnie on this show, and so now we see Tom Arnold as Jackie Thomas. It's just so stupid. If the episode was even more about that, it would get a lower grade. But luckily, it's just the last few minutes. They are hoping to go to a taping of The Price is Right, which another thing I don't like about the episode is Dan throws off a comment. Oh, well, how was I supposed to know The Price is Right had a 6-month waiting list, for tickets? Well, listen, me and my friends went out to L.A. and we waited in line for Price is Right, and we got on. I was right behind Contestants Row. So that is just, come on. It's not that anybody would really know that, but it just kind of makes me mad. So the last part of the episode is just Dan, or John Goodman, really, not barely even the Dan Connor character, just doing impressions and stuff. It's so lame and so stupid. It would get a lower grade if more of it focused on Jackie Thomas, but the Winnebago stuff was at least interesting, and like I said, the baby chatter was good, and there were some laughs in there, so all right. And then the other 2 Bs, Of Ice and Men. This is where it's a DJ-centric episode. And there are a few laughs, but it's definitely a filler episode. And B is not bad, it's not a bad episode, but, in the ranks of Roseanne episodes, it's not the best. DJ can't really play hockey, so Darlene teaches him to fight instead, and so he spends most of the episode in the penalty box, and, it's kind of funny, but nothing's really happening. It's a filler. Well, I guess, there's some Fisher stuff in there. This is the season where Fisher comes into the picture, and we know him now as Laurie Metcalf's real-life husband, but in this season we know him as the abusive boyfriend, Fisher. So that's a B. And then the other B is the Halloween episode, which is surprising, I know, but This is the Christmas Carol Halloween episode where Roseanne isn't really in the spirit because Becky's not around and Darlene's moody, so she gets visited by 3 ghosts. And I never really love it when these shows go off the rails and do these weirdo, for all dream sequence episodes, this one isn't too bad, but it's never really said that it is a dream sequence, because especially when she's visiting the party in the Ghost of Halloween Present, it seems like that's what they're really saying in the real world, and it sort of gets referenced then when Roseanne shows up to the party. So it's like, was it really a dream sequence? I don't know, but it's annoying. It's still a Halloween episode, so I'll give it a little bit of a more of a pass. But honestly, you know what? Thinking about it, it's not even a B. It's a B minus. It's not on the B level, so that takes it down even just a little more of a smidge. But that's the bad. So many good things. Let's talk about them. So the 1A plus, and actually there are technically 2. Because the season premiere, Terms of Estrangement 1, Part 1, is an A+, but because it's a 2-part episode, it's only fair because I did it with the Vegas episode from last season. I treated both parts as one episode, because, it's a little more uneven, the Vegas one. This one, Part 1 is an A+, Part 2 is an A, so I'm just going to leave it as an A. Total. But the one episode that gets an out and out A+ is Crime and Punishment. Now this is also sort of a 2-parter, but they're not called the same thing. It's not called Part 1 and Part 2. So I'm gonna leave them as separate ones. The next episode does get an A though as well, so another good one. But this is the episode where we find out Fisher beats up Jackie. He is an abuser. This was the episode that really cemented the Roseanne formula of let's take an extremely serious issue and tell some jokes around it while still ringing these emotional notes. A lot of sitcoms will have the very special episode, but it will just be a dramatic episode of a sitcom. Here there are still laughs aplenty. And they are surrounded by the emotional heft of the episodes, and this is what Roseanne really, really does best. And this is one of the finest episodes that has ever been of Roseanne. And Laurie Metcalf really, boy, Jackie as a character comes into her own. I think this season. She really shines all season because of the drama and the comedy mix. There's a lot of stuff about her going to therapy here. There's a back and forth with her and the mother, with Beverly. And she gets a little crazier. We see Jackie sort of wig out a little bit more in this season, and it's great to see. I think she goes a little too far with that in subsequent seasons. But right here and now is like peak Jackie. Like, this is the best I think that Laurie Metcalf's Jackie character gives us this season. So, really strong. But that episode is just great. But let's go through the A's because there are plenty of them. So I said the season premiere, Terms of Estrangement, Part 1 gets an A+, Part 2 does get a B, gets an A rather. This is the one where Mark and Becky elope. So we find out a lot of stuff there, and it's very moving. It is hard for Roseanne, obviously, to deal with that. And come to think of it, I guess maybe there's a few more episodes where we do see Becky towards the beginning, when her and Mark first get married, because she does have to come back to the house to pick up the stuff and whatever. But yeah, Dan obviously. If you know the show, takes it harder than anybody. Dan won't even talk to her for a little bit in this 2-part episode, and then he comes around after a little bit, and in a few episodes later, we have him doing a phone call with Becky that's very heartwarming. What a great start to the season. I would say, I still have to go through 4 more seasons. I know it's not season 9. But I think of all the season premieres, this is the best one. So that's a great two-parter. What else? We have a lot of A-minuses as we go down here. Here we go. Good Girls, Bad Girls gets an A. It's not the funniest of episodes, but it's super relatable. This is the one where Darlene and Molly go to a concert for this fictitious band called Daisy Chainsaw. And Charlotte, Molly's sister, really wanted to go but doesn't really want to speak up. She's a great character, too. I'm glad they brought her along. You know, sort of the yin and yang between Molly and Charlotte. And Roseanne sort of takes Charlotte under her wing because she sees that she's sort of ignored at home by both the single dad and by Molly. But we see here, you know, the blindness of the single father. You know, he believes this awful excuse from Molly when Dan and Roseanne aren't buying it, you know, at all. And another great, line read from Laurie Metcalf about how, you know, a less trusting parent might think that, you know, you could poke holes in that story or whatever she says. But, you know, another great line read from her on that. That episode is an A. As we go down here, War and Peace, which is part 2, really, of Crime and Punishment. It's sort of the fallout from Dan going over and beating the crap out of Fisher. And at first we see a lot of people are very hush-hush about it. You know, they don't want Jackie to find out. And Dan specifically doesn't want Jackie to find out. But then she does because everyone's talking in the living room about it. You know, Chuck and Anne Marie are over and Crystal's over and spilling the beans. So the episode is, you know, largely about John Goodman in jail and then, Roseanne taking Jackie to the hospital to basically get checked out. I mean, this is another amazing, amazing episode. It doesn't quite live up to part 1, which is Crime and Punishment, but still another really just great episode. And one of my favorite Darlene Dan moments in terms of comedy comes when he's in jail and she comes in and is like, well, you know, he thinks Roseanne's going to come bail him out, but it's not Roseanne, it is Darlene. And you know, Dan's like, I don't have time for this, Darlene. And she's like, oh no, I think you do. It's just their back and forth is great. God, if it weren't for those 3 bad episodes, like, this would probably be the best season because there's so many A's and A-minuses I've given this season. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home is another great one. I'm not exactly sure. Oh, yes, okay, I do know what that one is. That is the one where this is the one Roseanne won her Emmy for. This is when their dad dies. First of all, it's got one of the most classic scenes of all time of the series. It's where Jackie's on the phone trying to talk to their deaf aunt and explaining that their dad has passed away. I crack up no matter how many times I see that scene. But this is another one with great emotional heft because we have the mistress coming to the funeral. You know, and of course Beverly's up in arms about that, but they're like, look, we can't stop her from coming. So, so the sort of the standoff between the two of them is great. And then also Roseanne has a great, moment with the mistress at the Lobo when we find out that their dad never really regretted beating them as kids. You know, he regretted, spoiling them, is what the mistress said, and Roseanne was just like blown away by that. So that is just you can see why she finally won her Emmy for that episode. And then It's a Boy, that is the one where David ends up moving in. I cry at this one absolutely every time. We see how awful his mother treats him. We saw in a previous episode this season that she smacked him in the face, with an open fist, but this was real verbal abuse and just her screaming at him. And, Roseanne went over there to kind of talk things out and make sure everything was okay with David and whatever, not knowing that David's mom didn't even know that the plan was for him to stay there with the Connors. And, when Roseanne says, I've changed my mind, you can move in with us, David. I mean, I am just bawling, and this time when I watched it, just because I'm going through the episode so fast, it's so emotionally investing to go through them like that. I literally started clapping, even though I knew this is what was going to happen. I've seen the episode probably, 10 or 12 times, but I got very emotional about it. It's such a good episode, a great showing, again, from Roseanne. And then the last A of the season is Tooth or Consequences. Really, it's probably an A minus, but there's just so much humor in it. We see the return of Martin Mull as well. He's playing a health inspector now. Lots of laughs there. And Roseanne, loses her tooth, so there's comedy mind there. And then, a lot of stuff with Beverly and Jackie, and also Bob Odenkirk shows up in a cameo. There's a few cameos this season. Now, Bob Odenkirk wasn't super famous, but he had done the Ben Stiller show at that point, which I always love, so I liked seeing him. And Chris Farley shows up for a quick one scene with that. Did I miss any? There is one more A. This season is so good. It was 20 years ago today is that episode, so I went a little bit out of order, but this is the anniversary episode. Dan has to get a great anniversary present for their 20th anniversary, and he wants to give her, first he wants to give her a shoe rack, and Jackie tells him no, but then he decides to get her ring, redone with new jewels and stuff, and it starts kind of a fight between him and Roseanne, but what causes even more of a fight is he gets this part-time job that he really enjoys, at least temporarily, at the Big and Tall store, just to pay for the ring, but he has to work on their anniversary. So it's like, that classic sitcom sort of routine where, you're working towards something, but, you can't go to that thing because you've got to work, and it's like, well, if I don't work, I can't afford it, and, that. But they have a really nice, moment at the end there, outside the store. So that is another A. So tons of A's, more than any other season. Season 5 is great. However, those 3 episodes really do bring it down. So unfortunately, it's an A minus for the season overall. But it is really close to an A just because of all of the great episodes. So what else is going on in this season? Well, this is the first season, I think, where you really need to see every episode. The continuity, and I talked about this last time, that because it started a lot in season 4, a little bit in season 3. Roseanne was the first show that you really had to watch just about every episode once you hit like seasons 4 and 5, because most shows to that point were sort of, well, you watch one episode, you get the gist of it, you can watch another episode 2 seasons later and not have missed a thing, but here you really have to watch everything. Every episode has some nugget of okay, here's what's going to happen, except maybe the Halloween episode or maybe the Jackie Thomas. But even that one had the baby chat in it, which doesn't come up again this season, but we do see it, later. And, it's sort of adopting David is sort of getting another kid too, so it sort of does come back, I guess, this season. But what else? So at the end of the season, you've got the Darlene art school stuff, where they decided to let her go to art school. That obviously is very pivotal in the next season. David does not want her to go because he didn't get in. We see a lot of stuff about Darlene's vegetarianism this season, especially because they own the Lanford lunchbox. And so it's the family business now, and Darlene's got a little bit of a crisis of conscience because she doesn't want anything to do with this, the slaughtering of cows, and she even does some chalk drawings, sort of vandalizing the family business. So that's a bit of an issue, obviously, with the family. And I found out Sara Gilbert is a vegan in real life. I don't know when she went from vegetarian to vegan, but it's been a long time. This is the start of outtakes in the closing credits as well, which I never liked that much. Home Improvement was always big on the outtakes. So was Fresh Prince. I'm never a huge fan of outtakes. I think if the material's funny enough, write a clever outro for us, so that doesn't really affect me that much. Stand On Your Man. That is a great episode. It's not quite an A minus, but Arnie comes back and finds out Nancy's a lesbian, and it's one of my all-time favorite line reads from Roseanne Barr, when she is telling him, hey, a lot of things have changed since you've been gone, Arnie. He's, oh, well, what's changed? She's like, well, Nancy's a lesbian, and we got a new lens crafters, and just her line read is so great. I always crack up at that. And then also another great read in that episode, because that's the one where the dude like the really weird dude comes to the diner and freaks Roseanne out, and so they have to go to self-defense classes. But she comes home all frazzled, and Darlene's like, "Oh, you know what happened?" And Roseanne's like, "Well, he didn't really do anything. He just kept asking for more coffee." And Darlene was like, "That's called a customer." You know, that's a funny line. What else? Okay, so it was 20 years ago today, the episode, one of the A's I gave out. Roseanne makes a comment that is a throwaway line back then, but it's a little more prescient now, when she says, "What if the pictures get out from her boudoir session? I'll never get to be president." And then, of course, you know, we know she had sort of a little bid for president a couple of years ago that obviously went nowhere. But, you know, there's even a documentary called Roseanne for President. So that line kind of stuck with me a little bit. And then the last thing I wrote down was Joseph Gordon-Levitt shows up at the very end of the season as DJ's annoying friend. We see him a couple more times in the next season. But I've always loved Joseph Gordon-Levitt. This was the first time we saw him, and then, of course, Third Rock from the Sun, just maybe 2 years or something after that. And then, of course, we know him now as a wonderful actor in so many things. But yeah, that was the start of it. Little JGL. So another fantastic season in the books. I mean, if not for the Jackie Thomas episode and the Halloween one as well, it would probably be another A season. There's definitely more A's given out than any other season, and a lot of A minuses as well. This season is solid through and through. So another great one in the books, Roseanne Season 5. We'll be back with Season 6. There was no new episode on ABC this week, so I will also be back in a few days with a new episode review, because we didn't have one this week. They took a week off, which makes sense because May Sweeps is about to start, so let's finish the season with the last 4 new episodes. We're up to almost 5,000 views on the last episode, by the way, the Darlene versus David new episode, which is just so mind-blowing. I know I've said it in other videos, but I just, you know, come on. Usually a few dozen views is what my videos get. The Roseanne ones definitely do better than most of my other videos, most of my movie reviews and stuff like that. But to have a video go to almost 5,000 views is insane. So I can't thank you guys enough for all the love and support there. Please subscribe to the channel or check me out on Facebook at Dan Reviews It there. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye.